Thanks for checking in, as always, to the A-List podcast. I'm Kwani Lunis, joined by Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn for another week of unpacking the drama that is the NBA. How are you two doing?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How you doing, Gary?
Gary, how you doing?
Got all them Olympic rings behind him. Feel like a champion today, huh, Gary?
That's right. I'm a champion today. Yeah, I'm good. I'm great.
That's good to hear. So we're going to talk about the offseason. Obviously, this whole summer, I'm sure there'll be something to talk about at every point during this offseason period. But the Celtics are off to a hot start. They already were able to trade for Malcolm Brogdon, which there were a few players that they had to give up. That bench that Gary has been talking about over the last few weeks, they were given up for the most part in exchange for an additional piece in Brogdon. What were your two reactions to that trade?
I think it was a good deal for the Celtics. I think Brogdon's a good player. He's got some durability issues now. You know, what's going to happen with him and Smart, I think we'll figure that out. But I also think it was good for them to get rid of some of the guys, the dead weight on the bench. Unfortunately, the Daniel Tice, that didn't work out as well as I think we all thought. His his comeback, and it got to the point with a different coach. Ime didn't want to, didn't trust him in the playoffs. He wasn't that reliable third big. Aaron Nesmith, it sounded good when they drafted him, and the whole I'm the best shooter in the draft, quote unquote. It never worked out for him, and so I just think he needed a new environment, a new place to play, some place that that he can play and just make all of his mistakes. It wasn't going to happen in Boston. And I think his lack of development hurt the Celtics greatly. I think with their bench, they never had that shooter. They never were able to get that shooter. So I just think it was good to get, to move on. And obviously Brad doesn't have the patience with draft picks that Danny does. And I think that that's in many ways a good thing. These teams ain't going to put you on the bench for 3 or 4 years anymore and let you develop. Yeah, I just think throwing Nesmith, and obviously he still has tradable value. I mean, for Indiana, it's a young team. It's rebuilding. He can play with a bunch of young guys, bond with a bunch of young guys, and be in an environment where everything isn't, well, go out there and hit 2 or 3 threes. If not, you're going to be back on the bench. So, and I said, Juwan Morgan and Leak Fitz, nice guys, and Stauskas that clears the bench. But for me, I made a mistake earlier. I'm looking at a contract like Brogdon's signed for a couple more years. So I think that's good. Like, you have him on your payroll, you have Derek White on your payroll. So this is long-term movement, and we'll see what happens with him and Smart and who's going to start and where Brogdon's going to play. But remember, durability has always been an issue with Brogdon. He's not a 80 or 75 game a year guy. He's more like a 50 or 60 game a year guy. So let's see if he can keep healthy, if he enters camp completely healthy after missing a good part of last year. But it sounds like, he's a guy who's mature. He can create his own shot. He can hit the three. He hit 38%, I want to say, from 3 cup last year. I'm not going off last year. He struggled. But I think for him, it's a good move for him to rebuild, and it's a good move for the Celtics to get that reliable, steady ball handler.
Yeah, they're adding a guy who is going to be in their regular rotation and at sometimes will be a starter, depending on injuries and things like that. And it costs them the guys at the end of the bench who weren't going to play.
Which was technically nothing. They
literally got a rotation guy without having to get rid of anyone in the rotation by getting rid of the guys at the end of the bench that weren't going to play.
Yeah.
Danny Ainge has done his hustles in the past, but Brad Stevens is coming out like, hold my beer. Let me show you how this is done. This was an incredible deal simply because of the talent that they got in return. And the points that Gary's made about his injury-riddled history, very legit and valid. But the role that he will be asked to play in Boston will allow them to have a certain amount of load management without really calling it load management, because you're going to have a point guard rotation of sorts where you've got Smart, Derek White's probably going to get some minutes there, and Brogdon will as well. If Brogdon is in that mix, he's probably looking at the 20, 25 minutes per game range, which for him is a great thing. That's the best way to keep him as healthy and as durable as possible. And for the Celtics, I mean, this puts them in a pole position to run it back and get back to the finals. I mean, they went into this offseason needing a stretch big, a playmaker, and maybe someone who could knock down 3-point shots. They have already addressed 2 out of those 3 in the first month of the offseason. We'll talk about the stretch big a little bit later. But Brogdon is a great fit. And to Gary's point, when he came in for his workout with the Celtics, you felt like you were talking to the next president of the United States. He's got that type of presence about him, that type of leadership about him. And speaking of leadership, when you think about him, you think about Grant Williams, you think about Jaylen Brown, all of whom have active roles within the Players Association. So you've got a different kind of leadership that you're developing, not only in terms of off the court, but I think you're going to see it on the court. Because now, Brad has already done the daycare thing. He's not trying to do that to Ime. Brad has already tended the kids and made sure that they get their sippy cups and they get their minutes and go all that stuff when he's dealing with all these young bucks and kids who just are out there, ain't ready to really help you win games. Brad's like, I'm not going to do that to Ime. I'm going to get him with some guys who can not only play, but guys who are under contract so that Ime ain't got to worry next year, oh my God, I'm losing like half of my rotation. Mm-hmm. Brad is coming out looking like that dude as a GM. As good as people thought Brad was as a coach, He's better as a GM. He's off to a better start as a GM than he was as a coach. And he was pretty good. He was pretty good. I mean, the guy finished, 4th all-time in wins for Celtics head coach. But what he's been able to do as a GM, way more impressive than what he did as a coach.
And one more thing on Brogdon, you mentioned the experience being a big aspect of this roster, the maturity level that's there. He spent 3 seasons in Milwaukee, 3 seasons in Indy. What do you think that experience overall is going to, I think, help translate to this Celtics roster, if it can at all?
Well, I think with Malcolm, you've got a guy who has been at a couple of different spots, and there's always a bit of knowledge that you take from all those places. And the big thing about him that I appreciate is that he's a leader, he's a competitor, and he has a level of familiarity with a couple of Celtics that will help. I mean, when you think back a couple of years ago when Jalen Brown is actively involved in social protests, look who's right with him, Malcolm Brogdon. That you can't underestimate or undervalue the importance of having a certain level of familiarity with the core guys that you're joining forces with. I guarantee you that him and Jalen have had at least one conversation since all this went down, because that's what they do. And again, the thing about Malcolm that I love is that he's a grown-ass man out there. I mean, he may not be the biggest guy, he may not be the strongest guy, but you got a guy who's smart, intelligent, is going to make the right decision more times than not. And the only real knock on him is he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't really been healthy since basically his first couple of years in the league, which, by the way, he won Rookie of the Year, the first second-round pick to do that ever. So you are getting a guy who can ball, who's experienced, familiar with your core guys, and should put you in a pole position to get back to the NBA Finals. Because I think right now, if the season began right now, the Celtics would be the odds-on favorite to come out of the East.
Yeah. Another transaction that came up from free agency so far is Gallinari getting picked off of waivers from Atlanta. How do you think he'll impact this Celtics roster?
Danny Ainge is probably thinking like, damn, I've been trying to get him to Boston all these damn years, and now I'll even get him. They have loved that dude for the longest time. And he's a 6'9", 6'10" stretch big. He's knocked down threes. He's a scorer. That is what he does. He gets buckets. Now, defensively, that's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be the big challenge that Ime is going to have with figuring out the best way to utilize him. Would not be surprised if you saw him on the floor a lot with Rob, because if Rob is playing that free safety, that gives Gallinari a little bit of a safety net to frankly not suck defensively and it hurt the team. But I love the addition, especially, again, you're getting a guy for pennies on the dollar. Your rotation that got you all the way to the NBA Finals, you didn't have to touch that. And you addressed 2 out of your 3 biggest needs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I like Gallinari a lot. I think he's a good scorer.
But
no, there's no but to it. I just want he needs to be in certain roles. the thing that impressed me the most is he can shoot over other players. Like he uses his height and his girth to be able to score. It's not just a three-point shooter, but he can shoot the three. Obviously, I was there, and that night in Atlanta, he hit 10 threes against the Celtics, which might have been one of the low points of that one season, last season, not last season, but the season before last, when I was thinking that Brad might be fired after that game, that Atlanta game, where Gallinari was just looking like Steph. So he's a 39% career three-point shooter. He's a strong offensive player. And I think defensively, he's not a stopper by any means, but he can use his size. He's 33, 34. He can use the elements that he has to provide resistance. That's all you want. You don't want, he's not going to be a defensive stopper. He's not going to be someone who is, going to shut down anybody, but just draw a damn charge, get a block, get a couple of rebounds, things that, guys who aren't great defenders do to stay on the floor. I think that's not asking too much from him. I think it's a good addition. I would like to see another wing who can play a little bit D, a little 3-and-D guy, maybe with that minimum slot, because they got some slots to fill. And I'm sure they're going to probably use Summer League and look at some guys who are playing in Summer League. They're going to, there's a kid, Isaiah Roby, who just got released. He was on waivers from Oklahoma City. They might look at him and claim his contract because he's another young body maybe they can bring in. So there's some options, but I like the Gallinari move. I do think they need more, but I've always liked him. And I said, he's aging gracefully. He's not, over the hill. He still knows how to score the basketball. He got used to a bench role in Atlanta last couple of years because he was always a starter throughout his career. And if you look at his numbers a couple of years ago in Oklahoma City, in that bubble year, he was very good, very good. And so in the last 2 years for Atlanta, he's been very good. So I think it was a good move for the Celtics, Brogdon and Gallinari. Let's see what else that they can do. But I think two good additions to the bench.
Absolutely. It's a good addition to the A-List podcast, right, Gary? My people, Indeed.com. No one has a business like yours with all its strengths and challenges. To succeed, you need a strong hiring partner, and that can adapt to your needs. You need Indeed. It's the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Find great talent faster through time-saving tools like Indeed's Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed data. And as someone who gets those Indeed emails every single day, I love them. I love to know what's out there. And for me, it's been really cool because I can pass that information on to others, folks who need a job, folks who are looking for internships. And that's the cool thing about Indeed. They cover the whole damn market. Jobs, internships, leadership positions, you name it, Indeed has it. So not only is Indeed an amazing partner, but you can actually save a little money with the code Indeed.com/A-List podcast. Let me read that to you one more time. $75 credit now at Indeed.com/A-List. Indeed.com/A-List. Save $75 credit now at Indeed.com/A-List. Need a hire? You need Indeed.
Well, because we love corny transitions on this show, Brad Stevens is doing a lot of the hiring for this Celtics.
Indeed, he is. Indeed, he is.
And we've talked about him over the last few weeks. Brad Stevens, the GM, Brad Stevens, the coach. We're still going to be feeling him out this summer, figuring out exactly who he is as a general manager in his full season and a half, so to speak. But who do you like right now? Who is the running favorite between Brad, the GM, and Brad, the coach?
Gary, I'm going to let you go first, Gary.
I think Brad, I think Brad, the coach, is a great coach. I just think things kind of fizzled out. Things didn't work out toward the end, but I think he's a very good coach. Brad, the GM, has done a very solid job. I'm not going to give him an A or anything like that. I thought that they didn't have the bench last year that they needed to have to be a championship team. And that's something I'm sure he'll, he's bolstering at this as we speak, and he's adding players to that because I just think, like we've talked about earlier, like you've got, Juwan Morgan and Stauskas they brought in, and they couldn't play him. Like, bringing guys. So now their bench is basically like, okay, Hauser, Grant, Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, Brogdon, and Gallinari. That's a solid bench. Now you need a couple of more guys. You could use one more old head and one more maybe 3-and-D guy. But I think Brad has done very good. Is obviously different from Danny. Danny coveted draft picks. Brad doesn't care. Like Brad's got that, it's like that meme of the brother with the flat top who does this. Like, you can't get criticized for your draft picks if you don't take any of them, if you trade them all. What I'm saying? Like, you can't jump me having bad drafts if I never draft. Gotcha.
I need Gary to voice over that meme every time I see it.
Yeah, you can't jump me. You can't give me a D on drafts if I don't use them. So I like Brad because that's kind of what he's doing. I mean, they don't have a draft pick their own till now 2024. He's like, hey, have it, man. Have here, Indiana. Here's San Antonio. Here, have our first rounder. We ain't tripping off 28 or 26 or whatever. And I get that. And there's so many different ways from signing guys off the street to cultivating guys like a Hauser that you can get quality young players. You just have to find them. Now that's where your scouting system kicks in and your assessment of talent kicks in. And I don't think it was all that great under the last few years of the Ainge era, passing up on Desmond Bain for Aaron Nesmith, the Carson Edwards thing. We can we'll talk about all that now. But I think Brad has been a very good GM. I'm looking forward to seeing more because I think he'll give Ime what he needs. I think them getting this close, I think Brad is probably kicking himself a little bit for not making more moves at the trade deadline, putting faith in guys that just didn't come through. The Stauskas thing, he was supposed to be this. He scored 57 points in a G League game, and it ends up he was a guy on the bench. But good moves. The Brogdon, the Gallinari. We'll see about Derek White. I'm not crazy about that move. The Horford trade. All right. So we'll see how it goes down. But now you got guys. He's lining them up. Tatum signed long term. Brogdon signed for a few more years. Derek White. Smart. Now you see about Jalen, what's going to happen there, because that's going to come up soon, the next year or so. And then you see, and we can talk about this. Do you sign Grant Williams to an extension this summer? Yeah. He's eligible this summer for one of those like rookie extensions. Do you offer him 3 years and 36 or whatever, something like that? Do you think that that's appropriate? Obviously you're not going to max him. That's crazy. But do you give him a 8-figure salary to start off with, or do you wait and then he's a restricted free agent? So we'll see. But I think Brad's done a good job. I give equal footing on Brad the coach and Brad the GM.
Oh, boo! Equal footing, boo! Gary, pick a side. Listen, I'm taking Brad the GM, and here's why. I saw what Brad the coach looks like, and there was a clear ceiling that Brad the coach had that he just couldn't break through. Undeniable. Brad the GM, in a short period of time you got rid of Kemba Walker, who, by the way, has not been good in the NBA since he was in Boston, for Al Horford, who people thought was washed up, but Al actually turned to be ready to just rain down on everyone and damn near got this team to an NBA chip. Now the Derek White thing, Gary, I don't know why you hate Derek White so much or hate that deal so much. I kind of like the deal. I like it more so now that you got Brogdon, because now Derek White, you don't have to necessarily have him in the role of being Marcus Smart's backup. You can actually move him around a little bit more, and he can help you, I think, defensively. He can be not 3-and-D, just D, because I think his defense is better than we saw. I think he will defend better going forward. And then you look at Tatum, you look at Brown. The Grant Williams thing is interesting because the one thing I will say about Danny Ainge, when it came time to give guys rookie extensions, Danny never overpaid. Danny, you never felt as if Danny was getting hoodwinked, hustled, bamboozled, and led astray. In fact, Danny was usually saving money. He was usually giving guys deals. And frankly, if guys wouldn't take that deal, then he just let them, he let them walk and take his chances through free agency or unrestricted free agency. So the point is this. Brad has way more potential to be better than he was as a G. He has more potential to be better as a GM than he was as a coach because we saw how far he could go as a coach, and that's the Eastern Conference Finals. We've seen in 1 year what he can do as a GM, and that's get 2 wins away from winning an NBA title. And by the way, Gary, great point about how there are things he would probably do better or do differently. He had a chance to address that in the offseason. You need a playmaker. You need a stretch big, and hopefully you can get another either 3-and-D guy or a guy that can knock down shots. He's already nailed 2 of those first 3 in no time, and he still got some major assets. I mean, that trade that the TPE that he has, that's still out there. And to your point, Gary, a young fella that got released by Oklahoma City, Isaiah, he's a good player. He's a really good player, and if they can get him on the cheap, which obviously that's the goal, he will have essentially done everything he needed to do in the offseason before we get out of the month of July. And that, to me, again, when you're able to do that at the level that he's done it so far, I see way more potential for him as a great GM than him as a coach.
But to add to that point, when you talk about Stevens' last 2 moves, it seems as though him and management really are about the mentality of we have to win one next year.
Get it now.
But do you think it's worth it in the long run? Gary mentioned the fact that they don't even have picks until 2024 now, I believe. So is it worth maybe postponing the building of a future team to just win next year?
Hell yes, but you better win next year. You don't know. You don't listen. That as we've seen with Brooklyn, as we've seen with team after team that had this window to win, that window can close on you when you least expect it. If you have a team that can get to the finals and you know what you need to add, damn it, you better go get it. You better not be messing around thinking about, if we just draft this guy with the 27th pick, maybe he'll develop into like a end of the rotation guy by year 3. Oh, hell no. Go and you use that pick and go win a chip now. Yeah. This is your window is today. That's your window of opportunity. You can't think about down the road. And besides, the way this league is grown and prospered, you're going to get opportunities to add good players. It then becomes on your scouting department to get you the right pieces. I look at Miami. They got Max Strus is a great example of a guy that, frankly, didn't really seem to register on anybody's radar of significance. And yet, lo and behold, he was a big factor in them getting as deep as they got into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about no damn 26 and 27 pick. If the Celtics were a bad team and they were doling out these picks, that would bother me because that means you're giving away lottery tickets. But when you're talking about picks that are going to be in the 20s, no, I'm good.
I think the key is honestly, the drafting of J.D. Davison. And I wrote this. It was really significant, not only because, they used the pick. They could have drafted and stashed a guy. They could have traded out of the pick. They could have taken some guy that we'll never see, who will never, ever arrive in Boston, who's playing in, CSK Moscow or playing in Lithuania.
Fenerbahce.
Or playing in
Turkish League. Shout out to the Turkish League.
Denmark right now. Instead, they took a guy who has upside and is going to make the roster. And they're going to, unless he playing some G League time, we'll see if he becomes a two-way player or he makes the team as a full-time player. But to me, that says something about Brad investing in the future. Take a 19-year-old. There's no pressure on him. Let him develop. And then in a couple of years, he might be your starting point guard if this dude develops into, as Colin Sexton did. Remember, Alabama players usually make good pros. We go all the way back from Latrell Sprewell, Robert Horry, all the way to now. I mean, Alabama players are dogs. Herb Jones from the Pelicans, dog. Like, Alabama players make dogs. Okay, and that's what the young man said today. He's going to be a dog out there. And I think that was probably is different from, because Danny didn't take the one and done guy who slipped. Danny would take some dude overseas, and we'll see what happens in the summer league with the kid from France. The kid from Israel is not going to play because he's playing for Team Israel, but the kid from France, we'll see how summer league pans out. But like, I thought that was a critical move in the future for Brad looking forward, saying, you know what, let me take a kid who's slipping, who probably won't contribute, but he gets around all these young guys, veteran guys, he gets leadership, he gets to work, he plays, and all of a sudden, 2-3 years from now, hey, you got quite a player that you've cultivated that only cost you a second-round pick. So I think that's what you have to, that's how you have to build the future. If you're not going through the draft, okay, you're not going to get any lottery picks. Then there's too much talent out here now, and too many, the draft is a crapshoot, right? The draft is such, like, you can get a player as good at 40 as you can at 20. It's just the way it is. These kids ain't ready. These kids is one and done. They coming out the G League Ignite, G League Unite, the G League reunited,
Ignite,
reunited, and it feels so good. They coming out of all these different elements, and some of them are ready, and some we'll see. But we'll see with this draft how whether Keegan Murray is better than Jaden Ivey, whether Paolo Banchero, like all these guys, not all of them is gonna make it.
Yeah.
So I think Brad understands that. That's why he's okay to trade his first rounders and say, listen, we can get guys off the street, you can get guys overseas, you can get guys from the G League, and you can cultivate. Look at Sam Hauser. They signed him to an extension, undrafted. So you can find these gems. And there's a kid from Purdue, a big man from Purdue's on the summer league team who was undrafted, who might make an impact and may make the team. So you just have to trust your scouting department and your talent assessment. But Sherrod's right. You go for it now if you got a chance to win it. Look at what Milwaukee going for it now. Golden State, like, look at the Clippers, right? They're going for it. Like, these teams ain't messing around. You can't waste Tatum and Brown's time, because eventually they're going to be 27, 28, and they're going to be other young guys coming up trying to win championships. So you got to take advantage of it now.
And the thing that they've done that I think is really impressive, and I think Gary kind of alluded to this, is that they don't need young guys to come in and help them win games. They can develop guys in a way that they couldn't before. Whereas when you draft in the first round, you're hoping that guy can at least be in your rotation year 1 or 2. When you're drafting a guy in the second round, he may play, he may not play. If you don't play him, is there a hole in your rotation? And the answer is no, with J.D. Davison. And I think a lot of people, who maybe don't follow the high school scene that closely, he was like one of the top 3 point guards in the nation. 5-star recruit that you're able to get in the second round, that you don't have to play, that there's literally no pressure to put him out there and play. You telling me that kid can develop into a potential all-star one day? Would not be shocked if he did. Would not be shocked, because he was not great at Alabama, but he showed enough flashes to where you think, like, you know what? His game may be more suited for the next level. And I think that's Brad's mindset when he's looking at those second-round picks, because he's thinking that, you know what? It's not that this kid is imperfect. He's just young. And I think that's going to be the way that Brad is going to utilize second-round picks going forward. He's going to be looking for that highly regarded young kid who, for whatever reason, falls to the second round, that they can spend a year or two developing, who can potentially be better than half the guys that were taken in the first round that year. I think JD has that potential. You're not going to have to play him, and he's going to be in the midst of playing. Think about this. This is his education. Yeah. You get to get your lunch handed to you by Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White going to give you some of that. Tatum going to give you some of that. Jalen Brown going to give you some of that. And all you got to do is just soak it all in, learn from it, and get better. You don't have to play. You don't have to put up numbers. He is in a perfect position to have a long-standing career, as opposed to have a good year or two. Don't be like cats like Boobie Gibson and them cats from back in the day who had like 1 or 2 good years and then they were done, out of it. He has a chance to be a really good player for a really long time, because he's with an organization that can develop him with no pressure to play. But the pressure that you can tell if you listen to him today, he wants to play. He's got He's got that dog in him. You can kind of tell he's got that dog in him. And I'm mad at Gary Washburn for not mentioning Antonio McDyess and all them players you talked about from Alabama who got the dog in them. Don't forget about my old boy McDyess, the Olympian. I'm done. I just had to get that off my chest.
This week, we'll be headed to Las Vegas Gary might be there already, for Summer League, which is where we get to see the future of the league overall.
Come on, are you coming?
I might be there. I might pull up.
Oh, snap. Oh, snap.
Maybe. I'll surprise you guys on next week's episode of the A-List Podcast. Okay. But who are you looking forward to? If you want, I can list off some of the names on this roster. But honestly, the names that are standing out right now are Sam Hauser, Matt Ryan, just because there's a Falcon named after him, not necessarily because of his own credentials. Travion Williams, I think, Gary, is the kid that you mentioned a little bit earlier about potential wild dark horse. We look at what might happen
this
weekend. Yeah. So is there anyone that specifically stands out?
I want to see Sam. I want to see Sam Hauser because Sam Hauser is the one guy that they have already invested a decent amount of time, energy, and resources in. And he's also the one guy that has a skill set that they could use. Even with all the changes and all the additions that they've made, Sam has the potential to help them from day one of start of the season. And I'm curious to see how he's going to operate when, if we're being honest and real, he's got to be their go-to guy, at least early on. And I'm curious to see how does he handle that. And obviously, as we learned from Peyton Pritchard, what you do in Summer League does not necessarily translate into the big leagues. But I will say this about Sam. I do believe he's one of those guys that he's a rhythm shooter. And if he gets into a nice flow, nice rhythm, hopefully he can bring that over into the regular season. And he's, again, a guy that was hurt in the playoffs last year, who I thought that there were some opportunities where if he were healthy, they would have seriously considered throwing him out there. And by the time he got healthy, they were already kind of in their routine of sorts as a rotation, and it just didn't make a ton of sense to bring him out there. But Sam's a guy that I'm looking really forward to checking out, seeing what he can do.
You didn't even mention your guy, JD Davison. You just wrote a whole piece on him for Full Court.
Listen, I just talked about JD. I just hyped him up last segment.
A little bit.
I didn't want to.
You're not looking for it.
I want to keep I know what he's going to do.
Hey,
he's going to show out.
I'm going to make you feel old here. JD Davidson's birthday, October 3, 2002.
Ew, that's so disgusting.
That's my mama's birthday.
Oh.
Me and JD like this now. That's my mama's birthday, October 3rd.
He legit 19.
Ooh.
I'm looking forward to...
You all right, Kwani?
No, that's my youngest brother's age. That's weird.
I'm looking forward to a kid who was a former Clippers draft pick, Mfiondu Kabengele, former Florida State kid. Just kind of fizzled. Was taking the same draft as was Terrence. God.
Terrence Mann.
Terrence Mann, exactly. Sorry. He played on the same team as Terrence Mann. It's kind of bounced around. He went to Cleveland for a minute, but let's see what he can do. I mean, the spot for the third big is open. He's 25 now. You hope that it might kick in and he might be able to give them something and show. I mean, when you're 25 and you're playing in Summer League, you're at the point where you should be better than most of the dudes out there. Like, you should dominate Summer League. Like, Summer League is for the youngsters. So when you're playing Summer League, like I'm looking at Broderick Thomas. He's another kid who's 25. Like, these kids should be dominating Summer League. Like, we can see, and we've all seen Summer League where you could just see a dude step on the floor, like Keegan Murray just did this past weekend at the California Classic, where he's like, okay, he's like the best player on the floor, right? Like, he's too good for Summer League. Like, I don't know, I want to see some play from him. And also the French kid, who I thought played pretty well last year, Begarin. He's a big kid, 6'5", 210. Let's see what he's learned over the year, whether he can stick to the roster. There's some opportunities, some open roster spots. So does Brad bring in some veteran minimums? Does he bring in some of these guys? Does he look at Travion Williams? There's a lot of guys. And then Jordan Bone, former college teammate of Grant Williams at Tennessee. and, kind of bounced around, was with the Pistons for a minute. We'll see what he'll do. I don't think he'll have a big chance, but there's some intriguing guys on this roster, and I'm sure they might add a couple of others because I think they got like 10, 11 guys. They might add 2 or 3 just to fill it over the next couple of days before their first game on Saturday. But I think the kid from Florida State, there's the third biggest open. He's athletic. Can the Celtics work with him and get him a chance? And also, for you Taco Fall fans, Taco's playing for Utah Jazz. So if you want to watch some Utah Jazz Summer League, he might start with Gobert gone. Taco might have a real shot at Utah, and obviously his relationship with Danny. Mm-hmm. But Taco Fall is playing for the Utah Jazz. And there's a couple local kids. Noah Kirkwood from Harvard is in Summer League, and another kid from BU. So there's all types of reasons. Basketball never stops, and this will be fun to watch. The summer Celtics and see who develops.
Sure, we have some breaking news during our podcast. Your guy Isaiah Roby just got picked up by the Spurs. So
damn it!
Sorry about that. Just felt like our listeners should know. Shout out to our producer Ahmed for putting that out.
Damn it! I told Ahmed in our chat, damn it.
Right.
I'm just relaying to y'all what I told him. Damn it.
The Summer League team for the Celtics, Sherrod mentioned he's thinking that this will be the Sam Hauser show, but Ben Sullivan, he's going to be the head coach for this team during Summer League. What are you expecting from him?
Ben Sullivan is low-key really, really, really good. He won a championship with Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. He's part of that Spurs coaching tree. And the way he got involved in the NBA was basically Ime Udoka recommended him for a video job with the Spurs that he wound up getting, and that kind of set his whole NBA odyssey into motion. The one thing about Ben Sullivan that when you look at his background, he is someone who specializes in shooting. He's a shooting coach, and he worked under the guise of a guy named Chip England, who's one of the all-time great shooting coaches in the NBA. So that's part of why I'm really looking forward to seeing what can he do when you get Sam Hauser unleashed. What can he do when so much of the attention is going to be on the shooter? And that's something that Ben, again, that's one of his strengths. When he was in Milwaukee, the guy that he spent a lot of time working with trying to get his shot right was Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not by no means did he become Ray Allen, but he was not Allen Ray. Giannis was a much better shooter as things went on, and certainly when they made big shots when they won the title a couple years ago. What y'all laughing about?
Just Allen Ray. It was so corny.
That ain't cool. That ain't cool.
I'm just saying. He's not Allen. He's better than that. Allen was a good. He did his thing.
Allen Ray was a nice player at Villanova.
He was.
Don't knock him.
They had like 3 nice players.
Don't do that, Sherrod.
On a random week in July.
Allen's sitting by himself right now, chilling. Got thrown into a podcast he
spit up his Corona as soon as he heard his name.
He didn't do nothing.
His ears was itching.
I don't know. Maybe for Villanova, he might have scored 30 on Syracuse, and you still upset about that or whatever. So
no, he didn't. Trust me on that one. He didn't.
No, let that go.
He definitely didn't.
I don't really know a lot about Ben Sullivan, except he's a pretty intimidating looking cat. Bald.
I like Ben.
Bald with the beard and 6'6". So we'll see. Well, I think we'll learn a lot more about him over the next couple of weeks, what kind of coach he is. And I think it's a good opportunity. The Celtics are also adding a Black woman to the Summer League coaching staff. So look out for her. I have to research her name, but
okay. Is this breaking news as well?
Yeah, not breaking news. She announced a couple days ago that she was getting she got an opportunity to coach for the Celtics Summer League team, and I'll give you
Tamara Moore, Trailblazer, formerly of the
Tamara Moore.
Yeah. So
there we go.
Tamara Moore. So that's good for her, and we'll see. We'll get a good look at her, and we'll see. We'll see what some of the other guys can do on the staff. And they have a spot open, so maybe Tamara Moore fills that spot for the regular season. Yeah. We'll see what Ime does with that open position. But I'm looking forward to seeing Ben Sullivan and what he can do with his impact or whatever on this team. And I said, Summer League's always a fun time, but I think the Celtics have some work to do.
Yeah.
with the summer league team. Cultivate some guys, build their team in Maine. If you're not, because especially if you're not going to rely on the draft anymore, which they're not, it's time. You got to cultivate somebody. You got to find some of these kids. And I know, and remember, Brad Stevens is very close to Matt Painter, the coach at Purdue. I think that's one of the reasons why they took Carson Edwards, and I'm sure that's why they invested so much in Travion Williams. I think Matt Painter was like, hey, man, this guy's going to be good or whatever. So I think that's why that connection, and obviously Michael Shrewsbury, now the coach at Penn State, was a former assistant at Purdue a couple of years ago. I'm sure they both said, hey, you need to bring this kid on your team and see what he can do. So they got some work to do. And it's fun to see these kids develop, play hard against all the other teams in the league. This is the chance. Everybody thinks they got a chance. Orlando's happy, excited now. Charlotte, all the stuff. Mm-hmm. All these teams are excited about the new season. So it's time for the Celtics to get that work done this summer.
Orlando being excited does nothing, Gary. That is nothing.
Fair point.
Nothing for
the rest they got going on is Disney World or Disneyland. I don't even know which one it is.
And that ain't even got it going on like it used to. Last point I want to make about Ben Sullivan is that remember how not a whole lot of people knew about Joe Mazzulla before last summer league? And then afterward, all of a sudden you start seeing his name pop up with interviews here, interviews there. Ben Sullivan has that potential. When you look at his coaching tree, when you look at the fact that, again, what he does well, developing, at least coaching guys to become better shooters, that's a skill that every team would love to have in a head coach without question. So I think this is a great opportunity for him to really put himself in the conversation as being, one of the next members of the Ime Udoka tree to get a head coaching job. Will Hardy, my goodness, 34 years old. I ain't mad at you, Will. I am not mad at you.
Before we leave, let's quickly go around the league with a game of fact or fiction because we have not played a game here in a while, and I'm sure everyone missed that. So our first prompt is KD wants to be traded and Kyrie wants him to come with him. Fact or fiction?
You go, Gary.
That's fact. I think they still want to play together. I don't think they want to play together in Brooklyn. I'm not really sure what turned KD off from Brooklyn. They were allowed to kind of run things there. But I do think I think it's a fact, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think both of them are resigned to going their own separate ways. And I think KD wants to try to win another championship on his own and try to figure out whether it's Phoenix or Miami or whatever team, Toronto, just go about his own path. And I think Kevin, he'll be 34 in September. So Father Time is starting to knock on his door a little bit. Hey, I need to, if I want to win one last championship with my team, me being the number one guy, I got to find the perfect place. So I think that's why he wants out.
Gary, I'm going to say fiction. And here's why. When Kyrie decided that he's going to opt in, what did Kevin Durant do? He wants to be traded. I don't know if I'm playing with my boy and my boy says he's staying. If I want to still play with my boy, wouldn't I just say I'm staying too? I wouldn't put words out that I'm trying to get rid. See, here's the thing. I think, Gary, to your point, I think that they are still cool with each other. I still think they have a good relationship. They're friends. They just can't play with each other. We all got people that we love to death. But if you ask me to work with them, not trying to hear it. I think Kevin Durant is still.
I think they're fine, Sherrod. I think Kyrie opted in and was just sort of like, I'll give you one more year. I ain't guaranteeing nothing, and I'm gonna be.
Well, he never guarantees nothing.
So why would Kevin want to play under those circumstances again? And then he doesn't trust the organization. He might not think Steve Nash a great coach. You don't know what he thinks of the general manager. Sean Marks. Like, there's a lot that is going on here, probably behind the scenes, organizational wise. That Kevin's like, okay, I'm tired of it. Get me to, and it could be a situation where he just wants to see where he can go, and they might be talking to him every day, and then he rescinds the trade demand. You don't know. Maybe Kyrie's talking to him. I just think with Kevin, I think he just is like, I just want some peace and tranquility. I done my job. It hasn't worked here. It's time for someplace else. But I still think they want to play together, but I don't think they want to play together in Brooklyn.
Well, if you're talking about peace and tranquility, and then you throw Kyrie Irving's name in that conversation, bruh, I don't see it happening.
No, I agree, but Kyrie's got some type of trance on Kevin. It's interesting, their dynamic, their relationship, that friendship that developed that we really didn't know about, how close they were until all of a sudden Kyrie became a free agency came, and all of a sudden they were like close friends. I don't think any of us, they didn't play high school together. They're 4 years apart in age, so they're a different quote unquote NBA generation. I mean, it's interesting.
I think that 4-game sweep by the Celtics woke Kevin up. I think the transfer, whoa, wait, did we just get swept? Kyrie, did we just?
Embarrassing. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Dejounte Murray traded to Atlanta. Does that make Atlanta a top 5 team in the East?
Fiction. Atlanta, they'll be better. They'll, no question, be better. And I think he is a better complement to Trae Young than anyone else Atlanta has had. But when I look at the Celtics, I look at Philly, I look at Miami, I look at Milwaukee. I look at, again, there's right there, that's 4 teams without giving a single bit of thought that I know with Mr. Murray in Atlanta are better than Atlanta. So, no. Fiction for me.
I think they're on that cusp, because if you look at the 4 teams Sherrod mentioned, and then you want to throw in maybe Toronto coming off a year, and then they get healthy. Cleveland's a team to look out for, okay, the Cavaliers. And then I think now you start looking, what are the Knicks going to do? What about Washington? And, then you got the teams that are going to be fighting for the play-in. But I think Atlanta is a little bit better than that. So I think they're a 6-7, top 7, 6-7, and they could get to 5. We don't know about, because there's going to be teams that slip. Brooklyn's probably going to slip, right? Indiana's in the tank. Charlotte has had a disastrous offseason. They're going to probably slip. I mean, you got all these teams, what I'm saying? And then there's going to be teams at Chicago. Who knows what to make of the Bulls? The Bulls are they're probably in that 5th, 6th slot. So I think you could say Atlanta's as good as the Bulls, but they got to figure out what to do with John Collins. He's been on the trade block for a year now. They traded Kevin Huerter for kind of just a couple of guys, Mo Harkless and Justin Holiday. So I think the Hawks have more, and they gave away Gallinari. So I think the Hawks have more work to do before they're a legit top 5. But I think now they're on that pushing Chicago, Toronto, 6-7.
Okay, staying in the East, Ben Simmons will have a bigger impact on Brooklyn than Harden will in Philly.
Go, Gary. Go, Gary.
Spice things up.
I think he will. I think Ben's going to come back healthy. Ben's going to be on a mission now. As I said, I don't understand how you can be an NBA player and not learn how to shoot. I don't understand that. I've never understood guys who play and pick up every day, play thousands of games, and then don't learn how to shoot. Or if you can't shoot or not good, get a damn shooting coach and learn how to shoot. Magic did it. Jason Kidd did it.
LeBron still has a shooting coach.
Karl Malone learned how to be a very good mid-range perimeter shooter off the pick and roll. You learn these skills by the summer work, okay, in the gym when nobody's watching. So, but I think Ben will be on the. I mean, his career is on the line. He'll still get paid. He's still got that contract. But people, as I've mentioned before, the league will forget your ass if you don't play. Look at John Wall.
John who?
Yeah, look at Westbrook. If you sit a year out or you have a bad year, the league is next. And so I think Ben ain't young anymore. Ben's not, he'll be considered a bust if he never plays again because it didn't work out in Philadelphia. So I think he's got a lot on the line. Now, he might not love the game anymore. He might not love the game as much. He might like the social scene and being Ben Simmons, but we'll see about that. I think he'll have something to prove, and I think he'll prove something. It won't be an all-NBA, but I think he'll be a definite factor for the Nets.
Fact for me. Ben will be better in Brooklyn than James will be in Philly. First of all, James is not going to come in tip-top shape, so he's automatically going to start playing from behind, because that's just what that's just who he is. That's what he does consistently. And to Gary's point, I think Ben will not only come in with a little bit more of an edge and something to prove, but I just think he's going to have more opportunities. I think the situation in Brooklyn is going to eventually pan out to where Ben is going to be one of their top 2 players. I think that's, to me, the reality of it. And they need him to be that player, a guy that can impact the game significantly at both ends of the floor. Ben has to get back to being that guy. He is an elite defender, can guard 1 through 5. Offensively, he's got incredible court vision. And to me, if I'm coaching Ben Simmons, we're going to spend all summer working on a 15-foot jump shot. We're going to spend all summer working on you bringing the ball down court, pulling up from the free throw line, knocking down that shot. Because if he's able to do that, oh my goodness, then all of a sudden you got to defend him at that point, and he's good enough to beat you off the dribble and finish at the cup. Then he becomes a 20-point, 8-9 assists, 8-9 rebound guy that when you start looking at the top 10 MVP candidates, he's somewhere between 4 and 6. He becomes that impactful. And all is simply a matter of him adding a 15, 16-foot jump shot to his game. And I think that we're going to see him at least attempt that more, because I think he's at that point now, as Gary's point, there's no turning back. There's no more, well, he can be okay not shooting jump shots. Hell no. You need to actually show some legitimate growth as a player. You had an entire year to work on your game with no games to play. You didn't have to worry about traveling to and from. You didn't have to worry about road trips. You didn't have to worry about fans booing you, begging you to shoot. You literally had a year to work on your game. And I know that there's some mental health issues that he has spoken about, and certainly you have to take that into account because that stuff is real. That stuff is serious. But at the end of the day, you're an NBA player. You're one of the best 400, 500 players in the planet. Start playing like it. Start playing like it.
Well said. New York, did they tamper with Jalen Brunson? Fact or fiction?
Well, see, now here you go. They hire your daddy. Your agent is the son of the GM. You got folks from the organization checking out your playoff games. Come on.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Born at night, not last night. Come on now. Listen.
The timing is hilarious.
All those factors make it pretty compelling argument that the Knicks may have kind of stuck their hand in the cookie jar before they had to. Mm-hmm. But it all stems from the fact that Dallas is salty. Dallas, they feel as a hurt. They developed him. They gave him opportunity to be a great player, put him on a platform with one of the greatest players in the game right now, and he shined. And they're like, let's run it back. And he's like, no. But my daddy worked for them. And my agent there's just so many factors that make it hard to believe that the Knicks did not have an end for Jalen Brunson before free agency began.
And quickly for our listeners, Brunson reportedly struck a 4-year deal that's worth over $100 million. Obviously, that's not necessarily hasn't cleared yet, and there's still an investigation that's pending at this point. But to Sherrod's point, it's looking a little murky for New York right now. But Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think that they had been targeting him for months. Dallas messed up by not signing him to an extension and then waiting, and he flourished. He was a very good player. I still don't understand how he fell to the second round, but the Mavericks made a good pick, and you want to cash in on those picks. When you make a good pick like that, you want that person to be with your franchise for many years because, you found them. But, yeah, the Knicks targeted him for the last several months. Of course, I don't know how you prove that. But obviously he didn't even meet with the Mavericks. He was like, fellas, you can do for me. My dad's there. My agent's, leading me there. I want to play in the bright lights. I want to go where I'll be appreciated. I'm there. I'm signing with the Knicks. So yeah, they'll be tampering. Will the Knicks lose a second round pick? I'm sure something to that effect, but they got their guy. Now they got a guy who's not an all-star. Will he be an all-star? What will he do under the pressure of playing at MSG and all that stuff? We'll see. The Knicks spend a lot of money, man. $78 million last year on Evan Fournier. They brought Kemba back home, quote unquote. Remember we were discussing that last year. Kemba's home. He's ready. and then they just, the thing that killed me is they cleared out their entire roster. I mean, they traded Nerlens Noel, they got rid of Kimba, they got rid of Alec Burke. They traded and moved like 3 or 4 guys just to clear space, so now they still got some other gaps in their roster. So we'll see. I mean, but yes, it was tampering.
Our last one, I'm going to read you a tweet and then I'm going to pose the question. So July 4th, Jeanie Buss puts this tweet out there. I miss KB, talking about Kobe Bryant. He would understand and explain everything that I'm not allowed to. Honestly, he was the greatest Laker ever. He understood team over self, meaning your rewards would come if you value team goals over your own, and then everything would fall into place. All can reply. I'm not really sure what she meant by that last point, but Jeanie Buss was throwing shade at LeBron. Do you think that's fact or fiction? Because it was giving a lot of shade towards.
Go, Gary.
No, what was the shade toward LeBron?
Then you clearly are taking the fiction aspect of this. But basically, it seemed as though the way the tweet was portrayed, she's missing Kobe Bryant, says that he's honestly the greatest Laker ever, and basically was subtweeting at someone, I don't know exactly who it is, that is basically not taking the team goals as a responsibility over their personal goals. That's the way I interpreted the tweet when I saw it on the 4th of July.
I didn't really see that.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, like, I don't care what LeBron does as a Laker. He's never going to be like greatest Laker of all time. So that's not a slight. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's a line for that. There's Kobe, there's Magic, there's Kareem, there's Shaq, there's Jerry West, and there's Elgin Baylor. Okay? And you can even put in Wilt Chamberlain.
Oh, Wilt in there too.
Yeah.
Okay. LeBron is behind all them cats.
So in other words, he's that 8th man. He's Aaron Nesmith.
Like, I grew up a Laker fan. Like, this is no. So I mean, some people say Magic's the greatest Laker of all time. Some people say Kareem, and the younger people say Kobe. I can accept all the LeBron, bro. You gotta get to the back of the line, bro. So he's the greatest Cavalier of all time for sure, and one of the greatest Heat players of all time. Him or Dwayne Wade, however you want to put it, whatever your choice.
So what did she mean by this?
I think Jeanie is just, I just think the Lakers organization needs to be quiet. Just sign players and try to win games. It's just been too much, drama. Rob Pelinka, Magic, Jeanie Buss, like, win damn games. You're in LA, okay? You have the biggest free agent draw. Y'all still can't win basketball games. Y'all getting beat by New Orleans and getting punked by teams. Like, win games. Like, y'all, it's like, they got Westbrook. Who signed off on that? Like, LeBron can make suggestions, but it's somebody else higher up that's got to make that move. So, who's signing Westbrook's checks? So I understand Jeanie Buss being frustrated, but win some games. Be quiet. Go into the lab. Build your team. Rebuild your team. Draft well, and try to come back. That's all I got for these folks who want, the Lakers are just too much drama. And it's been like that for a long time. That's why Magic got the hell out, and they ain't been the same. Even the bubble championship, I give them props for the bubble championship because they were the best team. But since Kobe left and all that's, it's not been the same. Yeah. It's been a merry-go-round of just drama, and then LeBron comes there, and it's just it's not been what they thought it would be.
No, not even close. Not even close. As far as shade at LeBron, I'm gonna go with fact on this one, Gary. I'm gonna go with fact because it comes out of nowhere, and it clearly draws a distinction between Kobe and anyone and everyone who might be in the conversation. And last I checked, playing right now, there's only one Laker that can even be remotely in the conversation. And I agree with you, Gary. He's definitely at best 8th, maybe 7th on the depth chart of all-time great Lakers. But I think that there is, as LeBron gets closer to the end of his playing career, I think there are a segment of fans who don't understand the history of the Lakers. You know, they look at LeBron and think that, well, look, he brought them a title in the bubble. I mean, he got a title in Cleveland. He got some titles in Miami. Of course he's the greatest Laker. And they don't understand how incredibly, frankly, otherworldly Kobe was. Magic, Chamberlain, Kareem. You go down a list of all-time great Lakers and you stack their resume as a Laker, not as an NBA player, but as a Laker up against LeBron, and it's not even close. Now, if you're talking about as an NBA player, that becomes a different conversation because LeBron has done enough to where if you're talking about the all-time greats to play the game, LeBron has done enough to where he can be in that conversation. When you look at the success he has had at multiple destinations, and especially in Cleveland, if we're being honest and keeping it real, there were some trashy teams that he was getting to the finals. I mean, he was dragging. He had the hefty bags on both shoulders going into the finals with his crew. So he gets made, to me, LeBron's always going to get major props for me for what he was able to do in Cleveland. Miami, he stacked the deck. Lakers, somewhere in between. But the bottom line is he was a catalyst for greatness wherever he went. But that being said, the Lakers have not been great in his time. They've had a couple of good years, but they haven't been a great organization. And that, to me, is what separates him from all those other people that we're talking about who've done the damn thing in Lakerland. Like when Magic was there, the Lakers were it. When, Kareem, they were it. When you start looking at the guys that were Kobe, they were it. And even when they had a down year, it didn't last long. Kobe willed them back to being great. LeBron, I don't think he's got it in the tank anymore like that. He's still a great player, and he still is, in my opinion, he's still a top 10 player in the NBA. But he ain't the top. He may not be 10, but he ain't top anymore. And that's the reality of where he's at. And the Lakers are as an organization, because I remember Gary, you probably remember this when they were in the bubble. The narrative was that who has a brighter future, the Lakers or the Celtics?
Oh, yeah.
And people were just the Lakers. They got LeBron, they got da. And now a couple years later, the Lakers are an absolute just dumpster fire. And you got Brad Stevens out here saying, "Hey, give me the former rookie of the year, and give me this cat that we've been trying to get for the last 5 years. We're picking him up waivers."
And he does it all in silence.
Right. Exactly. Brad has been he's been that real G moving in silence like lasagna.
I said true for that one.
That's what he's been at. That's how he's been rolling.
Well, that's a wrap on the podcast for the week. Gary is disapprovingly looking at the two of us, but
he got the rings. He got the rings behind him. So
once again, we want to shout out Indeed.com. If you want to sign up for a job posting, go to Indeed.com/A-list and use that promotional discount as well. For Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani A. Lunis. This is the A-List Podcast.
Vegas, here we come.